What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Die Hard MMA podcast. This is Pub Sports Radio, the main channel. We are finally back after some YouTube shenanigans. We're back on our home here, main channel, Pub Sports Radio. And thank you all so much for being here with me. How is everybody doing this evening? We're coming off of a hell of an event. UFC Vegas 26 was a ton of fun. And on top of that, we have UFC 262 just right over the hump coming up this week. We're going to talk about it, break it all down tonight from a betting perspective, try and put some money in everybody's pockets. And I am super excited. This card is fantastic. Got to welcome in the chat Chase Warwick right out the gates. Oh, I love you too, buddy. Thank you very much. Grateful dude, what's going on? Mohammed Boston in the house. We've got Nigel Lee, Eric Block, Joseph Nussbaum. We've got Hayden Schneider, Peter Scarillo, Nick Pepard. I don't think I've seen that one before. What's going on, Nick Pepiard? I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm probably just butchering your name and repeating it on stream here a million times over. I'm sorry. Mike Hunt, what's up, buddy? We've got Kevin Nate, Brandon O, Danny Betts, my boy Danny. We got to do some fireball together pretty quick here. Ryan Grant already asking for the head rub. There you go. Get it out of the way early. Big Rocker Johnson. Thank you, everybody, so much for hanging out. We've already got 50 people in the chat. Let's kick this show off with a bang. We've got an awesome guest for you this evening. First off, I want to let you all know, open, honesty, transparency. As I've always said, that's all you'll ever get from me. I'm coming off of a slight losing weekend. It could have been much, much worse. Could have been a hell a ton better from last week. We will do a quick recap of that, but I just want to let you all know that, as always, I am not a professional sports gambler, and that's why I bring these awesome guests who are semi or professional sports gamblers on the show for your entertainment, to give you some damn good information and opportunities to fill in the cracks where maybe I let things slip. What I do here on this show is dump absolutely all the knowledge I can for you about a fight card and then tell you what I am betting on, and you get to use that information and make your decisions your damn selves. So keep that in mind. I was getting some heat on Twitter the other day for some reason for people coming after me with my losing picks. I never tell you guys to follow me. If you want to tail me, great. Hopefully we'll cash together. I'm working on getting better at my craft, but I've never promised you that I'm the best sports bettor on the internet today. I've never told anybody to tail my picks whatsoever. If you choose to do that, you're a big boy. You put your own pants on one leg at a time, and you can make that decision yourself. There's only one thing I've ever promised you that I will do or have been for you, and that's that I'm the best damn son of a bitch on YouTube today. And with that, we're going to welcome in my special guest, the man himself, Luke from Sparring with Reality. Luke, what is going on, buddy? How you doing today?
How's it going, man? Happy to be on the show. First time. I think we had you on for one of our fight companions over on the Club and Sub. Hopefully we can get you on soon, but I'm looking forward to this, dude.
Hell yeah, man. It's been too long, and I'm slowly going to absorb the Club and Sub boys. We'll bring each of you in here at one point or another. Need to expand my circle of guests, and you guys are awesome. It was fun doing the live stream with you that one time, and definitely want to make sure we connect more and cross paths a little bit more often. It's a good group of guys. You guys got a good thing going on over there.
Yeah, for sure. I think we're actually approaching our 50th episode either next week or 2 weeks from now. So yeah, we're cruising. Yeah, fun time over on the Club and Sub channel.
Nice. All right. Well, make sure everybody check out the Club and Sub podcast. They do some serious good work over there. And it's one of the shows that I, of course, have to listen to. Hey, before I was podcasting myself, I was a podcast listener. So I still try to catch all the shows that I'm a fan of and stuff like that every single week. And Club and Sub is one of the ones I try to make sure I check in on because, yeah, you guys, lots of good information, lots of sharp bets, definitely making sure things are rocking over there. Speaking of sharp bets, man, how'd you do last weekend, UFC Vegas 26?
Yeah, I just squeaked profit for 2.66 units. It was a bummer because I had like a pretty hot start out of the gate, cashing Carlston Harris. I was able to grab him around like pick'em, and I think he closed like minus 160, minus 170. So super happy about that one. Cashed a big dog bet on Park. I hit Trezano at plus 240. I'm like, everything is just going great. And then I had De Lima to close out a parlay with the fight doesn't go to decision. And so he kind of just laid on him for 15 minutes. So that was pretty frustrating, not going to lie. So dropped 2.5 units there. And then I had 2.5 units on Hawes and Dawkins. Fight doesn't go to decision. Another pretty frustrating violence bet to lose. Both guys hurt each other. Dawkins had him hurt pretty clean and decided to clinch up at that one point. And I'm like, no, Kyle, what are you doing? So even if one of those came through, it probably would have been, a 5-6 unit night. If both came through, it would have been a monster night, clean sweep with 6 bets. So I went 4 for 6 for 2.66 units of profit. At the end of the day, I guess that's all you can ask for, but still a little bit of a bummer at the end of the day.
Yeah, man, can't complain about that whatsoever. I kind of had a similar situation, except I just squeaked negative instead of squeaking positive. So, at least you got the W. I lost less than a unit, so can't complain too much there. Those are the kind of swings that, you can kind of take a little shot and keep on rocking for the next week. But I am so pissed off at myself for not betting on Harris. That was a missed opportunity. I talked about it on the podcast, and I said it was a good bet. I try not to bet on UFC debutantes, and for some reason, something just wiggled its way into my brain and told me to stay off of that and not pull that trigger. And that was just a dumb choice. It was there for the take and left money on the table. So missed that opportunity. Took the shot on Tefon Injikui. Really disappointing on that one because I feel like he had the tools to win that fight and just kind of shut down. And then the point deduction was an absolute death sentence for him. Losing that point in the second round killed any hopes of winning that fight. I was there with you on the under 2.5 for Hawkins. Hawes and Dawkins. So right there with you. That one easily could have and probably should have come through for us, which would have put me in profit. And then I had Gillespie. I hammered that one. That was my big bet for the weekend. Won 3 units back there. I made the unfortunate error of adding Maurice Green late in the week, and that did not turn out well for me. In fact, that may have been one of the worst bets I've made in my entire life. I thought that there was something there, and honestly, I just did not expect De Lima to be smart enough to come out and wrestle him for 15 minutes. I thought at some point he was going to slip up and decide to strike. He was going to slip up and give up a transition or make some kind of a move. But Green was content to lay on his back, and De Lima never had to work, so it ended up just fading away, unfortunately. And then I had the Cerrone Morono under 2.5 plus 165. That hit. That was nice. And I had the under 4.5 in the main event, which again, that's another one that I feel like had all kinds of opportunities to cash. That was an absolute war between Waterson and Rodriguez. Waterson had her with the ground and pound situation. It looked like Rodriguez's leg was going to give out at one time. She took that big liver shot, and Rodriguez flurried on Waterson where the ref was telling her to defend herself at one point. I mean, I felt like I had a bunch of opportunities to cash that one. So kind of like I said on Twitter, the 2 unders, I'd line up and bet those again today. I don't think those were bad bets, just bad bounces, variance going the other direction, unfortunately. So could have been a winning night, ended up being a slight loss, and hoping to get back on track this weekend, man.
Sure.
All right. So welcome into the show, everybody. We got about 112 live viewers right now. Do us a favor. We have jumped over from the Pub Sports Radio side channel to the channel. We're back live here on Pub Sports Radio's main channel. Do me a favor. Smash that like button. Smash that retweet button. Get the word out, because hopping channels like that, sometimes people on the internet lose you today, even though we try to advertise it as much as possible. Do me a favor and take care of that. And let's go ahead and get right on into UFC 262. First fight of the night, we have got Christos Giagos taking on Sean Soriano. We have a late replacement. He was supposed to be fighting Joel Alvarez. Unfortunately, Alvarez has pulled from the fight, and I actually didn't have time after that news flipped to look into Sean. I know he was in the UFC before. He got dropped after a bad losing streak. He looked like he did okay on the regional scene, but he's got some losses scattered in there. Questionable, in my opinion, is Sean Soriano. He's a decent-sized underdog coming back here, plus 175 Christos is minus 225. Neither of these guys are spring chickens, man. Christos Giagos is a grinder, strong offensive wrestler, intelligent level changes. He does give up positions in grappling transitions. Unfortunately, at times he makes some poor decisions, in my opinion, there. And he struggles in round 3. This is a guy that does slow down, does gas out, and he's getting older. He's got 4 losses by submission on his record, and I was chomping at the bit to play Joel Alvarez, so I'm a little bit bummed that one fell through. Sean Alvarez is training with my guy Gilbert Burns at Sanford MMA. He looks like he's doing a bit better these days, and I think that the submission is on the table for Sean Soriano. The only problem is he's a mid to low tier fighter making his return to the UFC against a guy in Christos Giagos, who, even though he hasn't been overly impressive in the UFC, has at least been holding his roster spot. I don't know, man. Do you feel like this line is too wide, or how do you see this first fight of the night playing out?
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously you said, the guy had it, his first stint in the UFC, went over 3, lots of some good guys in there, getting run by Skelly and a couple other dudes like that, goes back to the regionals. But still some of the tape there is even limited to some capacity. Like I was only able to find, I think there's 2 of those sub losses he had, in between this period now that I couldn't find. So for this fight, I think that's a little interesting, and I'm a little bummed because it's hard to say whether the guy's really improved his bottom game or not from like what I can actually see. I mean, obviously on the rap sheet it doesn't look particularly good, and I think that's definitely the path in this fight is for Christos Giagos to come out and land takedowns. I think he should be able to get him with ease. If he wants to pass, I think he can move into dominant positions, so he could potentially be live for a submission or like a positional TKO or something. But that's also the thing with Giagos. He's not necessarily like a submission hunter necessarily. Like you said, he's more of your grinder. He's got a little lay and pray in him. And he's not an overtly great minute winner in the sense of, or I shouldn't necessarily say minute winner, but a guy who puts on like a complete 15-minute performance. He's dropped, like you said, the third rounds, multiple times to quite a few guys too. So that makes me just a little nervous that he's got, about 7.5 minutes of gas, not a crazy perennial finisher against a guy in Soriano who I think can probably be at least moderately competitive on the feet. Giagos isn't like crazy high output either. So yeah, I'm just kind of a little interested on Soriano just from a perspective of, what does he look like here in his second UFC run, just because there's, footage, at least recently, is just a tad limited. So it's kind of more of like a show me spot, and I think it's a decent fight to pass on, but I agree with Giagos being favored moderately.
I'm right there with you, man. I usually like kicking my night off with some action. I always try to find a spot to bet the first fight of the night because I'm a degenerate junkie. But as the T-shirt says, this is a fireball and popcorn fight at its best. Kick back, get a snack, make sure your pizza's dialed up and on the way, and just enjoy a battle here. I think this one's going to be a grind, man. I feel like Christos is going to be in control until he's not. He's either going to win a 15-minute decision or he's going to make a mistake late in the fight and give something up. I don't want to lay that kind of a price tag on Christos. So I'm right there with you. I feel like he probably should be the favorite, but you never know with these types of guys. He's not somebody I'm overly impressed with for the most part. Moving on to our second fight of the evening here. We have got a featherweight fight. Kevin Aguilar, the Angel of Death, taking on Tucker Lutz. Now, first off, let's just get this out of the way. Kevin Aguilar has one of the pound-for-pound best fight names in the game today. The Angel of Death makes him sound like a complete badass. Unfortunately, he's on a 3-fight losing streak at the moment. He is training with guys like Ray Borg and Lando Vannata, though. Vannata's fighting later on the card. Borg, the Taz Mexican Devil, even though that guy is out of the UFC these days because of weight issues, he's still a monster. So a good training partner to have. This is a guy that likes to walk his opponents down. He sits on his punches. He's got a real heavy 1-2, a big right hand. He's a good boxer when he's in tight. He mixes in good, dirty boxing, uppercut, stuff like that. He's got strong power hooks. My tongue is all kinds of tied today, damn it. I gotta get this thing together. Strong power hooks. He's got strong hips, good balance, and he can get caught a little bit waiting for counters. He can get sucked into that counter-striking game and kind of be a little low volume at times. Now, he is moving up to 155 from his last fight. Last fight he moved up to 155 and he fought Charles Rosa. He was at 145 before that. Something worth mentioning, he's been a favorite the whole first half of his career in the UFC. He's been a favorite. In fact, he was a minus 145 favorite over Dan Ige. So now he's in this spot against Tucker, who's a Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series guy, and he's an even money underdog. Plus 100 on Kevin Aguilar. Tucker Lutz is a minus 120. Lutz has been on the Contender Series twice. He's a guy that likes to blitz his opponents. He throws 3 and 4 punch combos when he does that. He does throw naked leg kicks, doesn't set those up very well. Strong wrestling base. He's got a good body lock, and he's willing to grind up against the fence on people. And you know what? He's one of these pick him up and slam him type of takedown artists. Sometimes he can just get a little bit brutish with that. Not necessarily the best technique, and just ragdolls people. At first glance, I'm a little shocked here. I mean, Tucker Lutz didn't get the UFC call because he wasn't impressive on the Contender Series. They didn't want this kid to be in the cage because he didn't show anything off and have much to offer besides just laying on people. And he slows down heavily in round 3. That was Dana White's big criticism of him on the Contender Series, is that he did nothing but lay on his guy in both of his round 3s. Now, obviously, that's something as bettors maybe we like to see because he does what it takes to win, but it's also kind of a red flag that he doesn't have much else left in the tank in round 3 except just to stay on top of his guy. I'm a big fan of the Contender Series fade, Luke. I'm very curious to see your take on this one because I'm thinking it might be a buy low spot on Kevin Aguilar coming in here against a Contender Series kid that might just be a little too big for his britches in his first fight.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I personally think Aguilar, I think the line should be flipped slightly. I think he should probably be, maybe minus 122 in this spot because I've always been I wouldn't say like a Kevin Aguilar truther necessarily, like you said, based on some of his odds and whatnot. He's largely been favored in a lot of spots, but even in the fight with Dan Ige, I mean, he had a solid second round, took that second round from him. Moderately competitive fight, gets blasted by Tukhugov, but Tukhugov, that's he's known to do that at times, throw that big overhand right, hurt him. But I guess the concerning thing for me, and why I guess from just a sentiment standpoint, I somewhat understand why the line is the way it is. He did not look good in his last outing against Charles Rosa at all. He showed up in pretty bad shape. Looked like he kind of just came off the couch. His physique did not look good. And Charles Rosa pretty much just kind of danced around him and pot shotted for 15 minutes and edged a decision that way. So I'm curious to see how he shows up here in terms of his just physical stature and whatnot. But in general, I do think he has the tools to win this fight, and kind of similar to the last fight with Soriano in terms of recent tape. There isn't a ton of tape out there on Lutz outside of his 2 Contender Series fights. So he's another guy that I kind of want to just sit back and take in a little bit more of his game. I have some reads and some things I like, some things I don't like, but at the same time, it's only 2 fights. This is his UFC debut. Tough, battle-tested guy. Fought the much stiffer competition. Kind of to your point, it does seem like a good bounce-back spot for Aguilar. I shouldn't say like good in terms of like odds, because if I was going to say it was a good spot, the guy should be minus 150, minus 186 or whatnot. But I do think he has a path here. And the striking, he's largely been pretty anti-Russell too, which I think is pretty important to note, given that's something that Lutz will go to. I think Aguilar's takedown defense sits at about 87%. When Dan Ige did take him down, he was able to reverse position. Dan Ige is a black belt as well. He was even able to threaten some submissions on Dan Ige, who's once again now top 10 type of guy. So I think that's important to note. I don't know if I want to get involved at this number. I'd like to get maybe a little bit better. Once again, see how he comes back looking from the Charles Rosa fight. Still some questions on Lutz. It's not a fight I'm clamoring to play, but I do think Aguilar is the side.
All right. I like hearing that, man. Absolutely like hearing that. That's how I'm feeling for sure. His back's against the wall, and looking at his Instagram, he looks like he's in much better shape. I'm glad you mentioned the takedown defense rating. That was something that really stood out to me as well, that, based on the guys that he has been fighting, having an 80% takedown defense rating is pretty damn impressive. And now he's fighting this kid that He's got a wrestling base, but he's one of these kids that did wrestling in high school and then transitioned into MMA. It's not like he's a D1 college grappler or anything like that. I got to feel like he's going to be able to defend the takedowns from Lutz. I think Lutz is just riding a little bit too high, like most of the Contender Series kids are. And Kevin Aguilar having a much, much higher level of competition, this should be enough of a step down for him to really show off what he's actually made of. And I do want to go back on, like, if you have looked at his Instagram, I don't know if you've stalked him at all like I do. I do every single week. I check these guys out. He looks like he's in much better shape. You know, with COVID, we've seen a lot of people rolling off the couch. I kind of want to give him a little bit of a pass that last fight out and see maybe if he's really bit down on his mouthpiece and said, I got to come straight. I got to keep my job. I expect him to look much better this time out.
Yeah, and I guess I just want to touch on another quick thing, too, in regards to the takedown defense. Barzola went 0 for 8 on takedowns against him, and Enrique Barzola can wrestle, man. I mean, I don't have his takedown metrics off the top of my head, but Barzola, you know, he's a, you know, up, down, mat return, lands a decent amount of takedowns for 15 minutes. So, you know, the stuff, 8 takedowns from a guy like Enrique Barzola, I think does pay some credence for Mr. Aguilar.
Yep. I think, you know what, I may have just talked myself into a bet there because that's a spot that I was looking at. I only have one bet so far placed on this card. And for you all listening, we got 173 live viewers. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us tonight. There's a lot of opportunity on this card. Usually with these big UFC pay-per-view cards, the lines are disgusting. You've got minus 250 and 300 favorites. You got to look totals. You got to look parlays. These are almost all pick'ems. There's really reasonably priced fights. So if you like your side, you're going to be able to make a convincing argument for almost every single fighter on this card. And I definitely was looking at the side of Kevin Aguilar. And that's why I love having guests like my guy Luke here to talk this stuff over, because just saying it out loud, I did the research. I leaned to Aguilar talking about it. I'm like, man, I think I need that plus 100. I think I'm going to have to lock that up as soon as I jump off the show. DFS by the numbers in the house. What's up, buddy? Saying great breakdown. Thank you very much. And yeah, man, I feel like he's saying people are blindly fading Aguilar. I feel like that's kind of what's happening. I absolutely feel like people saw his last performance and are just writing him off, writing him for dead, you know?
Probably a little recency bias on the line. I talk about it all the time in MMA, guys. I'm not saying it's necessarily this spot, but I can see, you know, when you look at trajectories and historics of past fights, you know, people really look at, you know, those last couple fights and whatnot, but people also tend to, you know, throw out the strength of competition or the stylistics to the side. They just kind of run down the rap sheet. Guys dropped a few, 2 or 3, lines the way it is, good bounce back spot. Hindsight 2020, Aguilar should be, you know, minus 150, minus 186. Could be that kind of a spot.
And that's the key right there. Aguilar probably should be about minus 150. And that's kind of the ballpark where I put him in, minus 140, minus 150. And if you're getting plus 100 on the guy that should be the favorite, that's a bet spot for me. It always has been, regardless of the results. So I'm probably going to have to take that one. Moving right along, man, we have got Gina Mazany, flyweight fight, taking on Priscila Cachoeira. Now, this is the one just absolutely everybody, the main event, the people's main event, waiting to talk about this one. Gina Mazany, 2-4 in the UFC and is a minus 220 favorite. That's about all I've got to say here. I mean, she's physically strong. She's got good offensive grappling game, but she's got the James Krause effect. You know, these fighters that are over there with Krause, he's an incredible coach. He's doing wonderful things with them, and I've actually been backing a lot of them because he's such a good coach. He's transforming these low to mid-tier fighters into solid fighters that can get the win against the proper level of competition. But I don't know that Gina Mazany should be a minus 220 favorite here. I feel like this line is incredibly wide. Her best UFC win was Rachel Ostovich, who is no longer in the organization, and she shells up when she gets hit, man. This girl does not like to get touched. She's going to have a 3-inch reach advantage here in this fight, and she's taking on Priscila Cachoeira, who's a member of Team Figueiredo. That's right. Davison Figueiredo is one of the guys that she trains with. She has a strong upright posture, stays in her opponent's face, always walks them down, and wings heavy, heavy bombs, man. She's got a big uppercut. She knocked her last opponent out, snapping a losing streak, and she's got power in that right hand. Her last fight against Courtney Casey, she was supposed to fight Courtney Casey, got canceled due to a bad weight cut. Again, this is a spot where, kind of like Kevin Aguilar, I think there's a recency picture going on here. We saw Gina look better than she ever has before. Everyone saw Priscilla look terrible on the scales. She's 1-3 in her last 4 in the UFC. But realistically speaking, I feel like she's got exactly the tools that she needs to beat someone like Gina Mazany. This is also a southpaw versus orthodox matchup, which means that right hand is going to be there all day for Priscilla. And the 2 times that Gina got TKO'd in the UFC, I know it was to a much higher level of competition, but both women hit her with 1 bomb and she immediately started backpedaling. I could see Priscilla coming out here, landing a shot early, and then just flurrying on Gina Mazany and having this thing waved off, man. How do you see this fight playing out?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a valid take, and it's definitely a very valid outcome of this fight. And that's why, like, originally when it was booked, and I think Cachoeira, I think she opened like plus 240, I think, or something like that, or even maybe a little bit wider, and it got kind
plus
of
250 on Bet Online, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that got bet down relatively quickly, and I definitely understand it. And so after doing a deeper dive into tape, I understand why Mazany is this big of a favorite, in my opinion, because I do think she has minus 200, minus 300 upside if she wrestles, though. Because what we have seen from Cachoeira on bottom, it hasn't been encouraging. Granted, Valentina Shevchenko, elite level girl and whatnot, I definitely concede that, but still took an absolute beating on bottom. She did get dropped by Carolina, didn't look particularly great on there, did get taken down by McCann a few times as well. And so if Mazany is proactively wrestling, I think she's live to get a decent amount of top time, maybe even like a positional TKO. But to your point, what we have seen from Mazany at space isn't overtly encouraging. She leaves her head pretty much right on the center line. We saw Avila blitzer. We saw Chason blitzer, get her out of there early. And like you said, she kind of takes that big shot, just kind of covers up, and then, it is what it is. So could Cachoeira, hit her with a big bomb and Mazany takes her ball and goes home? I definitely think it's a possible outcome, because what I will say in a 15-minute, range striking affair, is Gina Mazany minus 220 in that spot? Absolutely not. But the path is there for Mazany, for her to justify her price tag, assuming she wrestles.
I got you, man. Absolutely feel you there. And I got to side with a couple of people here in the chat saying things like Cachoeira is not UFC caliber and things of that nature. It can definitely look like that from what we've seen so far. But at the same time, I feel like she's got the tools. I feel like she's one of these fighters that could turn a corner and then look like something a whole hell of a lot better. It definitely is probably going to look like a line that whoever wins this thing is probably going to look like they deserved a higher line. You know what I mean? Because either Cachoeira is going to come out, land a bomb, and look like she should have been minus 350, or if she gets grappled by Gina Mazany, people are going to feel real comfortable laying that minus 200 because she just controls every minute of the fight. And those are ones that I try to steer clear from unless I've got a really fantastic read. I do maybe consider sprinkling Priscilla Cachoeira by knockout when it comes out. That might be in like a Hail Mary ticket or like a little just sprinkle for some funsies or something like that. But yeah, man, this is a spot that we probably should be passing on.
Yeah, that's not a bad shot at the KO, though. I mean, I think that's probably, her win condition, because once again, assuming it's a 15-minute, range striking affair with how hittable Mazany is, if that's the scenario of how the fight plays, Cachoeira, I think finding a KO is a very live outcome in that scenario. So I guess even though she's plus 200, you're getting definitely some meat on the bone and just taking her money line. But I honestly think it probably would be a better spot to actually just buy down, take a half unit flyer on the KO, just because if she goes out there, gets washed on the ground by Mazany, then you're not too overly exposed at the plus 200. You might feel a tad bit better about a losing ticket on the KO. Lower the unit size down, higher return if it hits. So,
yep, absolutely. And I think that that might be the move. We'll see if I have any degenerate room left in my card by Saturday. There's a lot of other opportunities. So what I'm trying to do, what I messed up with Maurice Green is that I made a late addition. I took a flyer on a shot that I was choosing between Harris and Green, and somehow my dumbass chose Green. So that's where I'm like, full recency bias on my own betting game is, do I take the half-unit shot on the knockout on Priscila Cachoeira, or do I wait and take a real fighter that's got a much better chance of actually winning the fight? I'm going to get my whole card done. I'll see all the spots I like. And then if there's room, I'll play Cachoeira by knockout at the end of the week.
What I will say, there's probably a lot better spots to target on the card, though. But I wouldn't hate the flyer. But what I will say, I just do not feel comfortable on laying minus 220 on a girl like Gina Mazany. So.
Exactly. No, I feel you, man. I feel you, and that's I need people like you here to keep me grounded. All right, man. Now's the perfect time to shout out one of our sponsors. Everybody, kick back, relax. We're going to play a little bit of something here for you. Shout out to Manscaped. There we go. Make sure you get yourselves all cleaned up and use that code for Pub Sports Radio. Next up, we got a middleweight fight. Jordan Wright taking on Jamie Pickett. Another man, I got to tell you, I love these cards. People look at this card and they're like, bro, it's garbage. It's trash. We're going to see so many finishes this week. Like, these are the types of people that find that chink in their opponent's armor and expose it. We're going to get knockouts. We're going to get submissions. These mid to lower level fights like this one are so fun for me to watch, man. Jordan Wright, 100% finish rate. This guy is maybe the epitome of the term can crusher. He is either kill or be killed. Maybe doesn't belong in the UFC. We will find out. He's explosive. He's powerful. He's big for the division. He's got offensive submission attacks. Low-key is he maybe a little bit chinny. Kind of seems like it. And he's taken on Jamie Pickett, a guy who is another two-time contestant on the Dana White Contender Series. He's almost the exact opposite. He's tough. He's durable. He can get outpaced in there. He's going to have a 3-inch reach advantage. He's got a little bit of finishing upside, but I wouldn't say maybe as much as a guy like Jordan Wright. I feel like this is an ultimate pass from a side perspective because maybe Jordan Wright is the better fighter, but I can't trust his durability. I feel like Pickett is live to clip him with something big and just put him away. But Jordan Wright, well-rounded enough, I could see him taking advantage of a guy in Pickett who is not a fighter that I'm overly impressed with or excited about. I feel like this might be a violence bet spot, man. If we get a half-decent line on the under 2.5 or fight doesn't go to decision, that's probably the way to go. Give me your read on this one.
Yeah, dude, it's a tough one from a side perspective. I do think if you are to bet a side, I do think Pickett is personally the side, just because I don't think Jordan Wright is a guy who necessarily is a great minute winner. Granted, Pickett isn't either, but I think based on historics, he is, largely finish reliant. He fights with his hands down, kind of funky, that karate style, a lot of spinning kicks, knees, that type of thing. But he's really actually, striking aside, he's more of a grappler by nature, but he's one of those grapplers that I kind of classify falls into like the Mark De La Rosa syndrome for me. He's a grappler, but he doesn't really possess much offensive wrestling upside. Like if you look at how, his submissions come, they're usually, funky clinch transition backpacks. He's hurting guys from there, and that's how his fights are getting down. And largely, to your point too, based on his strength of competition not being great, when you're running guys and taking their backs and subbing them who don't even have a pro win, that kind of is what it is. And with Pickett, at least with Pickett, he hasn't looked great in what we've seen, but L's to guys like Tafon. In L's to guys like Punahele Soriano, both guys who hit incredibly hard, clearly lost those fights, definitely struggled on bottom in the fight with Puna. But I guess that's my big thing. If it's a range striking match, I think at this point we can say that Pickett's largely pretty durable. I would say both Tafon and Puna hit harder than Jordan Wright, but that's not to say Jordan Wright can't finish him, because like I said, he's just kind of funky in what he does. If you don't mind your P's and Q's with those type of guys, they can catch you with stuff. But I would say Pickett's probably the better athlete of the two. longer. And so really what it comes down to for me in terms of the striking exchanges, does Pickett not necessarily bite down on the mouthpiece, but does just he have a more of a sense of urgency than he has had in the past? Because if he just tries to kind of play the pretty pitter-patter game with Wright, I think that's also playing into Wright's stand-up. So I think the path for Pickett is to just be more aggressive, calculated pressure, defensive responsibility. Don't overcommit. Just touch, volume, move. Maybe work some clinch stuff, but even then, I would still largely avoid that because I think that's probably where the openings are going to be for Wright in the fight. But to your point in regards to a violence bet, I'd probably feel better about that too. But it looks like they actually set the total at 1.5 and not 2.5. So would I feel comfortable about the under 1.5? Probably not. 2.5, depending on price. I'd be interested because I do think both guys have finishing upside. Like I said, if Pickett just goes forward, not necessarily bites down on the mouthpiece, but I think, the strikes will be there. Wright pretty defensively flawed, even though Pickett's been durable. Still defensively is not good. I think Tafon landed over 120 significant strikes on him. Once again, funky, weird guy, and Wright could catch him with something. I do think Wright is potentially live for a submission if he is able to close the distance, get into those funky type of transitions too. So I think a violence bet's probably the best way to go if that ever moves to 2.5. But from a side perspective, I think it's Pickett.
I feel you, man. I feel you. I feel like Wright is one of those guys that, maybe he turns a corner. Maybe he steps it up a notch and gets to the point that he's UFC caliber. But like you said, he's got wins over guys that have literally no professional UFC wins. He's got just the most padded record we have ever seen. And unless he gets an early finish, I feel like he could probably get picked apart here by Pickett. And I think that finish materializes. If Pickett does what he does and gets in there, kind of like you were saying, just repeatedly touching his opponent, I think that he doesn't have to rush the knockout. It will come to him. He'll eventually hit Wright with something that he doesn't like. However, if Wright forces the action, which I kind of feel like he might have to after a bit, because if Pickett does stay, relatively calm, cool, and collected, Wright might have to get in there and make something happen. Then the finish happens one way or the other. That might not happen in that under 1.5, like you mentioned. Looks like the opening for, if you have a book that does those fight does or doesn't start round props, that seems a little bit more interesting to me. The fight starts round 3 is -130. The fight doesn't start round 3 is +100. That's shaving 2 minutes and 30 seconds off of your under 2.5. You got 2 full rounds of action to try and get finished. That way, if it's a late second round finish that doesn't quite get under that 1.5, you're still good. That's kind of maybe the way that I would be looking for this side. And I think pick it by knockout is kind of what I'm feeling here for this one. All right, real quick, I want to give a couple of shout outs. I had a couple of people that were nice enough to go ahead and do some donations for me last week after cashing in on Gregor, laying the hammer down, my guy Daniel Kraus, Blake Weber, and of course my guy Michael Lund Day in the chat here this evening. Big, long-time OG supporter of the podcast. Glad you could make it for a live show, Michael. Love having you here, my guy. And I do want to shout out one of my other sponsors, GOATCapitalSports.com, at GOATCapital_ on Twitter. They do all the other sports out there that I can't help you much with. I try to help people with hockey. I've got some degenerate action going tonight, but don't do shit. Don't know anything about baseball, basketball. When football season rolls around, I will definitely be doing that kind of stuff. But they have a real cool thing going over at GOAT Capital that if you subscribe and you pay their entry fee, you get a full refund over the course of a week if you do not win using their picks. So really no risk there. If you have a winning week, you paid for it and it was damn well worth it. If you have a losing week, they give you your refund and you don't even have to worry about it. So real good setup they got going. Give them a follow. Let GOAT Capital Sports know that Clint sent you. And the next fight up is one that I'm very interested in, man. I can't wait to hear your take on. Flyweight women's fight, Andrea KGB Lee taking on Antonina, the other Shevchenko. Lee is 11-5. Shevchenko is 9-2. Lee is unfortunately on an 0-3 run. However, people need to know that little asterisk she's had 2 of those losses come against very talented fighters via split decisions. So there is a chance that people could think much differently about Andrea Lee if 1 or 2 judges had just seen things a little bit differently her last couple fights. She's a very aggressive striker. She's got a long jab. She does attack in combinations, something I like to see. She finishes her combinations with leg and body kicks, another thing that I do like to see. The only issue I have with her striking is she doesn't really move her head off the center line, does make her a bit hittable. She's really into brawls. It's a thing that she seems to suck her opponents into in damn near every fight, but she's really tough, man. I love the attitude, never quit that she brings to the cage. Right now she's training in Denver. You got to love the altitude with Tisha Torres, another fighter that's very high pace, high volume. So good spot for her, in my opinion, here. She's going to have a 2-inch reach advantage, and she is taking on Shevchenko, who is, we all know, a world-class Muay Thai striker, but she struggles a bit with her wrestling game. She has improved grappling. Her submissions are pretty nasty, but she struggles getting her opponents to the ground, and she's pretty much open for takedowns. Anytime anybody wants to get in on her, they can get her to the floor. This is the one bet that I made going into this card, man. I took the stab on Andrea KGB. I got her at plus 125, and it looks like as of now, I've beaten a bit of a line movement. She's down to about plus 110 for the most part across the market. You can get Antonina Shevchenko at about minus 130, minus 140, depending on where you are shopping. I think that Lee will be able to hold her own on the feet. I think she's going to have slightly higher output on the feet, and then she should be able to mix in the takedowns and have more success with the grappling exchanges. It's a close fight, but I feel like it should be a pick'em, or maybe Lee ever so slightly favored with that grappling advantage. So I had to take that thin spot shot on the dog. Luke, talk to me about this one, man.
Yeah, we're definitely going to agree on this one, too. I was an early mover on this one. I actually grabbed Lee at plus 155.
Woo, good number.
Yeah, it's not that I have supreme confidence in Lee, but to your point, I think she can make this fight a lot more competitive than odds indicate. Like if this is a 15-minute, range striking affair, I do think Shevchenko's probably crisper, probably faster, probably a little bit better in the clinch. But what Andrea Lee does do well is she spams a lot of volume. She is a girl that will be going forward. She's tough. So with that being said, I think, to your point, she can at least be competitive and maybe win the optics here. When it comes to WMMA, we've seen it, time and time again. Optics are a very, very big thing in scoring women's fights, which is something I do think that Andrea Lee could win here. And then to your point, despite Lee actually really struggling on the ground in terms of her last 3 losses, I think that's really her actually main path here is on the ground over Antonina. Like you said, what we have seen from Antonina on her back hasn't looked overtly encouraging. Has Andrea Lee struggled with control in terms of her wrestling? Yes, but I think she actually can get some ride time on Shevchenko. I'm not saying she's going to submit her or anything, but I do think it's a path to aid in her winning rounds here. So yeah, I think the fight should probably be pick'em, maybe even a slight lean to Shevchenko, just based on if it is a range, striking affair. But statistically, Lee does attempt a decent amount of takedowns and gets a decent amount of takedowns too. So, as long as that's the path, she decides to take and mix in. I'm not saying she has to dive on legs for 15 minutes necessarily, but I think once again, it would help her in terms of winning rounds. And then just on a quick side note too, I personally thought she beat Joanne Calderwood. I personally thought she beat Lauren Murphy. I thought she did enough in both of those fights to win. So hypothetically, let's say the Roxanne fight happens, same decision, 1-1 going into the third, gets out wrestled in the third and the first, drops that fight. But let's say she gets the nod against Murphy and Calderwood. She's 5-1 in the UFC going into this fight now. Is Andrea Lee plus 155? No. And not in my opinion. So it's, once again, stylistics aside, just from a public sentiment standpoint, that early line made no sense to me. I think right around now, the market's definitely correcting that earlier incorrect line. So, but yeah, I think there's a definite argument to be made that that Lee could be favored here too. So yeah, I like it. I think she's a good spot.
Good deal, man. I'm really happy to hear that we're both on the same side here for this one. That was one that I'm not going to lie, I was a little nervous about. So What I've had a history of doing, and I've noticed this myself. I know the simp comments are going to start rolling in here in the chat, but when I pick my fighter, I label somebody as a bet on there, somebody I'm looking to back. I can see that they can, turn the corner at some point and put it all together. Andrea Lee has been that girl that I've bet on several times, and these split decisions have robbed us. And like you said, she probably won both of those fights and maybe was on the wrong side of those fights. And if you remember the Murphy fight, that's the one where Joe Rogan was yelling at the judge for being on his phone in the middle of the fight. Like, he didn't even judge the fight that he was supposed to be watching appropriately because he wasn't even watching the damn thing. Like, there's stuff like that that goes on, and then it leaves you with a bad taste in your mouth. I'm sitting here going, I've backed Andrea Lee 3-4 times, and I'm 2-1, I'm 2-2. Like, this is, maybe it's just not working out, man. And then Antonina Shevchenko is a fighter that I have tried to fade time and time again because I see the holes in her game. She's getting older. She's not getting better. She's going to be the same package fighter that we're used to. You're not going to add a ton of new wrinkles at 36 years old. And it's just the perfect spot for me to back Andrea Lee. And I'm sitting there going, can I do it? I don't know if I've got the strength to line up after losing with this girl a couple times in a row and back her again. But I have to. Absolutely have to, especially getting that plus money. I wish I had got in on it sooner. I wish I had sacked up and made my decision a little bit quicker. You've got a gorgeous line at that plus 155. Plus 125 is enough for me. I think that's the right spot. I think it's the right side. I like it. I'm going there. I'm ready to rock. But damn, it's definitely nerve-wracking for me, man.
I'm right there with you, dude. I think I've bet Lee in like her last 4 fights or something like that. So I've been throwing the money in the Lee bonfire. But just a real quick point too, in regards to the Murphy fight, that was UFC 247 too. That was the Jones Reyes card. That was the James Krause Trevin Giles fight. That was the Andre Ewell Jonathan Martinez fight. Like, that was a card where there was a lot of really wonky decisions. I believe it was in Dallas, Texas too.
She is the hometown girl.
I think we're going back there pretty soon too.
That's worth noting though, right? They're in Texas this weekend, and she is going to be the hometown backyard girl. There have been a couple of questionable judging decisions in Texas, and we should get just that extra little bit of oomph having the girl that is who the crowd is cheering for, right? I mean, we got to, right?
It's funny though, because after that card, I was so jaded from everything that went on. I was like, anytime, if they go back to Texas, I'm not betting a fighter that doesn't have any finishing upside at all. I don't care. And yet here I sit with like 5-6 bets on the cards.
You know what? As long as they wear a cowboy hat, that's the same side. That's the same upside as finishing potential in Texas. All right, man. And Ryan, how dare you? Do not bring Jillian Robertson into this. I don't need to hear about it. Yes, I am the ultimate simp for Jillian Robertson. And the only thing I guess I want to say is Lester Half Jr., we're keeping it MMA in here, buddy. We will let you talk whatever you want to as far as, if you want to make fun of me, if you want to say I'm a bad gambler, that's fine. But keep it MMA focused. I don't want to time you out or anything like that. We don't want to get anything off the rails. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Next fight up here, we've got a featherweight match. Lando Groovy Vannata, we mentioned him a little bit earlier, taking on Mike Grundy. Vannata is 11-5-2. This guy's got a thing for draws. Mike Grundy is 12-2, and Lando is dropping to 145 for the first time here. He's a flashy striker, wild kicking game, kind of a front runner. This is somebody who likes to come out guns blazing, throw stuff, and then he lets the fight slide away from him as it goes on. Kind of got a bit of a poor IQ thing going on, in my opinion, makes some questionable decisions, and like I said, lets the fight get away from him, or he's chasing to catch up in the third round to force a 10-8 and get a draw of some kind. He's got a 58% takedown defense, but he's very active, 4.58 significant strikes landed per minute. Issue is he absorbs 5.1 significant strikes per minute. So while he is active and we like to see the high output and things like that, he gets hit a lot. He's not very defensively sound. Mike Grundy, you're not going to have to worry about this guy hitting you that much. He's a chain wrestling specialist. He's a machine, very physically powerful, breaks his opponents with just mat returns. Nasty squeeze on his chokes if he gets the opportunity. I still have no idea how he didn't finish his last fight. Movsar Evloev is a monster. Somebody hiding under my bed because I wanted to cash that Grundy ticket when he had that choke tightened up on him, and somehow he got out of there. Grundy averages 2.15 significant strikes landed per minute only, and he absorbs 4.09. So he's getting outlanded by a full 2 significant strikes per minute. This is a classic striker versus grappler, man. If Lando can keep this on the feet, he is going to pick Mike Grundy apart. But I've got huge questions as to what this guy is going to look like at 145 for the first time. And I kind of tend to side with the grappler. Grundy is a guy that I've been high on. I know he's a little long in the tooth. I know he's getting a little bit older. But you know what you're going to get. He's just going to continuously take this guy down. And because of that, I kind of want to side with him. He's a minus 115 favorite. You can get minus 105 plus 100 on the side of Lando Groovy Vannata. This is one that I'm staring at, man. I'm tempted to pull the trigger on Grundy, but I kind of am a little bit hesitant because of the questions surrounding Vannata and the fact that there's such an edge on the feet for Vannata striking. I don't know if the pure grappling is going to win a decision like we talked about with these judges in Texas. Talk to me about this one, man.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, at least in terms of it being a, striker versus grappler. I'm not going to lie. I don't have the greatest read on the fight in terms of who gets the best of it. And that's just because historically, Jacare, I think, is really the only guy to go in there and have extended wrestling success on Vannata. I know you touched on his takedown defense at 58%, which obviously is not encouraging, but he's fought some other good wrestlers in the past too. He's fought Bobby Green a couple times. Even Green's, success in the wrestling was a little bit limited. Frivola, wrestler by nature, didn't really have any extended wrestling success. I know Grundy, Olympic level, I think Greco guy. No, I think he might be actually a freestyle guy, but to your point, I mean, he's probably going to go out here and look to proactively shoot takedowns and wrestle. The question is, can he do that over the course of 15 minutes and win 2 rounds? I think it's possible. It's definitely in play, but to your point, I think on the feet, the activity of Vannata is probably going to be a bit too much. Largely, Grundy's just kind of one and done in terms of what he throws. And we have seen him dinged before, even before he finished Nad Narimani. He did get clipped in that fight too, and Lando's groovy, per his nickname or whatever, throws a lot of spinning stuff. I wouldn't be surprised to see him catch a guy in Grundy or outwork him. The question just is, once again, how often is this fight at space? Grundy probably the guy who's going to be able to dictate it, but I'm just curious to see if he's going to be able to hold a guy like Lando down at least for 10 plus minutes to go out here and win the fight, because I really don't see him finishing Lando personally. But I think a pick'em's probably right. I think there's a solid argument to be made for a lean to either guy, but it's not really a fight that I want my money invested in. So we'll see though.
Okay. All right. Another one that I feel like I'm glad to hear your take on. It gives me at least a little bit of hope there. Yeah, I mean, maybe just to stay away, because this is another one where, kind of like we talked about before, I feel like it absolutely could look massively one-sided. Whoever gets their game going is going to be the one that probably wins. And there's some questions about Lando and his gas tank. So if he gets grappled for the first 10 minutes, is he going to be able to pull the comeback in the third round? I'm siding here with Grundy. I'm going to say he wins this thing. I'm going to say he wins a decision. And I'm going to be very curious. Everybody knows about the post-weigh-in show I rock on Fridays. I'm going to be watching this one very, very closely, because if Lando Vannata has a bad weight cut, I will be all over Grundy come Friday, because I expect him to just put the boots on, man. He's going to go to work with the grappling. And as long as Lando Vannata is in any way compromised, I don't think he's going to be able to stop it. He won't be able to keep it up for very long. So he'll be kind of a first round or bust type of situation there. So that's my take, man. I'm going to say Grundy, and maybe a bet later in the week, depending on how Vannata looks on the scale. And Nigel Lee, what you talking about? I'm passing on every fight. We've only talked about like 5 of them. We got a full card here. I got one bet that I've made and one bet that I'm going to make. So come on, cut me a little slack here. Next fight up, we have got Matt Danger Schnell taking on Rogerio Bontorin. This is a fun fight, man. I can't wait to break this one down here with you. Schnell is 15-5, a guy that I've actually been pretty excited about. I don't know why. I'm a fan of Matt Schnell. I like his finishing ability. Rogerio Bontorin, the same could be said for him. Schnell has moved out to Fortis MMA. This guy's got slick BJJ. He's a talented striker. He's got fast hands. He's very willing to brawl. At least he was until his last fight. This is one where I had an under two and a half rounds last time out. And people always make fun of me for listening to fighter interviews and believing what the fighters say and things like that. But damn, man, in that interview, he said he was going to skip his jab off of Nam's forehead for 15 minutes. And that's damn sure what he went out and did. And I hated my under 2.5 as soon as I heard that interview because he wasn't going for the kill. And I knew he was going to put that good footwork, his improved fight IQ to work in that fight. So I will be listening very closely to Matt Schnell's interviews this week. I feel like he might be kind of turning into that elder statesman fighter. He's finally getting out of the drop the gloves and brawl mode. And if he's starting to do that, I kind of have not as good of a read on him anymore. I used to feel like I knew Matt Schnell very, very well. Now I don't so much. But this might be another spot to go right back to that under. Even given that he's shown that improvement, he's going to have a 3-inch reach advantage here, and he's taken on Rogerio, who's extremely well-rounded, very offensive grappling, wings big power punches to close the distance and forces the fight with his opponent, forces the grappling exchanges. We saw him just 2 months ago absolutely dominate Kaikara France, and I had a bet on Bontorin that night. I thought he was going to choke KKF out in the very first round. Kaikara found the button on the feet, and now we've got an extremely short turnaround for Bontorin, something that I hate seeing from fighters or love seeing when it comes to betting, because you shouldn't be coming back to fight after that kind of a knockout just 2 months later, in my opinion. So given the type of pop Schnell has in his hands, I could see another repeat knockout. Given the scrambling ability of both of these guys, I think both are available for submissions. It's been a while since Schnell has been knocked out, but I still have a question about his chin and durability in the back of my mind. He's taken a couple of bad knockout losses. I think Bontorin could clip him. Man, I want to go right back to violence. This is a spot where obviously most of the totals aren't out yet, and if they are out, you can't get your hands on them as much as you would like to. The under 2.5 is plus 125. Why are we not betting under this, Luke? Talk to me about how this fight goes down, man.
Right there with you, dude. I think the under 2.5 is the spot for this fight.
Let's go.
I guess to just play slight devil's advocate to your point before about, we're seeing an elder statesman, in Schnell. It was only really the one fight against Nam, because the one against Pantoja previously, he went to war. So that was kind of the big question going in. And ironically, to your point too, with the interview of, him fighting more smart, when he was originally scheduled to fight Nam, I think they were scheduled to fight like 3 times. He did an interview with James Lynch, and he said the complete opposite. He said he was going to go throw down with Tyson Nam.
Dude.
And then because of that, I'm like, oh no, Matt, you have one job to do. Just I'll let you go though.
I thought the exact same thing. I was on the under 2.5 every single time they booked that fight because I knew it was going to be a war. I think them canceling and pushing the fight back, I think they studied more. I think they found a hole in his game because they had more time to prep. And if they had fought the first time they had it slated, he probably goes out there and does what he usually does, right?
So I'm kind of right there with you. I think a smart, conservative Schnell, better gas tank. I think he's faster. I think his boxing and hands have always been super, super underrated. Probably one of the actually faster guys in the division when he fights more smart, when he fights more calculated, because at the end of the day, we now have 3 fights to suggest that the guy does not have, exactly iron durability in the quote unquote firefights. It's just not his game. But when he's fought smart, his fights with Marco Beltran, he looked great even against Nam. I know he dropped around in the fight. I don't know why it was a split. I thought it was a clear 29-28 for him. But I think it's kind of a similar spot where if he minds his P's and Q's, fights smart, uses his, mid-range boxing, stick and move, I definitely think he's the rightful favorite. But conversely, Bontorin's one of these guys, not super high output, lands, I think, only a little over 2 significant strikes per minute. But when he does come forward, he does chuck heat. And I think he might be the guy to draw that brawl. back out of Schnell, which is what terrifies me and which is why I can't back him. So conversely, in that scenario, we've now seen Bontorin hurt, not only in his last fight against Kai getting knocked out, he got dinged really bad in his Contender Series fight too. So it's not like the guy's completely invisible in terms of Bontorin. We've seen Schnell knocked out 3 times. So if we get that back and forth slugfest, both guys have shown power components. Both guys have shown defensive irresponsibility components. If this fight gets to the mat, Schnell only defends takedowns, I think, at 52%. Bontorin, black belt, took the back of Magomed Bibulatov twice, which is something that's not easy to do at all. Absolutely. I know Schnell can grapple too and is probably underrated in that capacity. Has subs from his back. So, but he's one of those kind of scramblier type guys who will put him there, which I still think make the grappling transitions in the fight for both guys very interesting. So I do see finishing upside on the ground too. So when I'm looking at these quote unquote violence bets, I'm trying to check these boxes. Does this guy have knockout upside? Does this guy have knockout upside? Does this guy have submission upside? To me, I think at least 2 to 3 of those boxes are checked. So when you can check those boxes and you see a plus number next to that, I think it's a pretty good look. But conversely, Schnell just fights smart, sticks and moves, and pot shots from the outside and works his way to a decision. And we're out here, about to jump out the window, come Sunday. But given the price point, based on the stylistic matchup, I think instead of backing a side, I'd feel a lot better about backing violence.
I like it, man. And you know what? Shout out to our guy Reggae Panda here in the chat. Crowds are back, man. And that, I think, is probably going to play a factor. Not something that I initially really thought about or considered, but absolutely. Like when they're cheering for people to hurt each other, you've got the guy hurt, the crowd roars, like that's going to add some emotion. That's going to also add some adrenaline dumps. I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of that going on, and I think there's opportunities for violence, and especially getting that plus number. Like you said, man, these guys both check the boxes for those finishing abilities. The way I like to put it is I need both fighters to contribute to my under. If one dude is like super durable, I can't bet the under because you can't expect that guy to go down. Well, right now we've got a guy coming off a knockout loss, quick turnaround. I question his durability. I've always questioned the durability of Matt Schnell. Maybe that's my own mistake, but I think there's something to be had there. And then you've got Bontorin, who on the feet reminds me a little bit of John Lineker. Just a little tank, comes in winging heavies. If he clips him, he can absolutely put him down. And then, of course, the submission game. Both these guys can catch the other in a transition with how talented they are on the ground. And then, like you mentioned, Schnell's boxing. Incredibly underrated. He's going to have a reach advantage. He's going to have a speed advantage. And he hits hard, man. That checks all the boxes I need to get plus 125 on an under 2.5. I am glad to hear that we line up there. I guess for the sake of the show, though, people always get mad when I don't pick a fighter to win. So I'm going to have to say Schnell. I'll go ahead and pick Schnell to win the fight, mostly because Bontorin is making that quick turnaround and coming off the knockout loss. So that's the one that I'm gonna say he clips him again. I'm gonna say he gets knocked out for the second time in 2 months. Do you have a pick on who you think's actually gonna win the fight, Luke?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Schnell just based on the fact, contrary to the under 2.5 take, that I just do think he has the better minute winning ability. So if this fight does hit the cards, I think it's more likely that Schnell wins on the feet. But conversely, I wouldn't also be surprised, if Bontorin was able to get a decent amount of top time on Schnell either. But the lean is Schnell from a picking perspective.
There you go. I'm in the same boat. Schnell's minus 155. Bontorin is plus 135 as the underdog. So good luck. I see a lot of the chat on Danger Schnell. Good luck there, everybody. I totally get it, but I don't necessarily want to lay that price. I'll roll my dice on the violence here. We are closing out the preliminary card. This is Pub Sports Radio, folks. You are listening to the Die Hard MMA podcast, and we've got 259 beautiful people hanging out with us on a Monday evening watching. I am joined by my glorious first-time guest, Luke, with the Sparring with Reality betting. You also may know him from the Club and Sub podcast. Good group of guys over there hanging out with me talking UFC 262. Ronaldo Jacare Souza, the legend himself, returns, taking on basically a younger version of himself, an Andre Muniz. This is going to be I think a lot of people are going to come at this from the grappling perspective, man. And I've got a feeling this is going to be one of those fights that both guys are good on the ground. Maybe it turns into more of a striking match. We've seen that happen before when, two guys are really strong in one area, they decide to duke it out and fight in the other realm where maybe they feel like they've got a slight advantage here. Jacare is 26-9, Muniz is 20-4. Jacare is 41 years old. Everybody knows the rule. We don't bet on fighters who are 40 years or older unless we've got a damn good reason to do so. He is a world-class Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Very, very physically strong. Heavy hands when he does decide to strike. He's another one of these guys that uses his striking to close the distance. Strong offensive wrestling and extremely heavy top pressure. If he gets on top of you, that's maybe worst case scenario, unless your name is Kevin Holland. He did just recently go 25 minutes in a full-on grappling match against Jan Blachowicz, the champion at 205 pounds. So I wonder if coming off the bad knockout loss to Holland, which is really kind of the true Jacare that we're going to see on Saturday. Tons of questions, in my opinion, because he made Jan work for a full 25-minute title fight, and then he got clipped by a freak of nature with long-ass arms and heavy hands. That knockout loss to Holland may have been life-changing at 41 years old, so we got to wonder if we're getting damaged goods in Jacare or if he can turn back the clock here and look the same way he did against Jan. Andre Muniz, he's another one of these walk-in, hands low, very hittable type of fighters. His striking is a work in progress. He's got heavy hands when he does decide to go to work, but his game is BJJ, right? He does like to rip his opponents to the floor, big, strong body lock takedowns, really aggressive from his guard, but he is willing to play off of his back. He is always hunting the submissions, looking for reversals and things like that. He's going to have a ridiculous 6-inch reach advantage here in this fight. Man, I had to kind of stop myself because this is a spot where I almost pulled the trigger on Andre Muniz, and then watching the way these two guys fight, I can absolutely see Andre Muniz accepting a takedown from Jacare because Jacare appears to be the stronger wrestler of the two. I can see Jacare being slightly damaged goods and getting caught with a bomb from Muniz. Like I said, these guys could have a little bit more time on the feet than we're expecting simply because both of them are such good grapplers. Neither guy maybe wants to test the other in that area. And if that's the case, well, Muniz probably hits harder, and he's got a 6-inch reach advantage. That could end very, very poorly for Jacare, especially considering the questions that we all have about his chin. So I decided that this one is just going to be a pass fight for me because I've got a weird feeling that Jacare reminds us one more time that he's an elite level fighter, and he probably gets the takedowns and grinds this kid out who is more than willing to look for arm bars off of his back. But I can't rule out a sneaky shot coming in while they're on the feet and just putting them away. So complete pass for me. Lean to Jacare, lean to the over. How are you feeling about this one, Luke?
Yeah, so I'm pretty vocal in saying this, and not that I feel like great about this angle, but it's just kind of a credo I've always had. I don't like to play the shot or not narrative with guys just because you don't know until you see it. So the one thing I guess the two main things I like to focus on, the stylistics, historics, and, then supplementary statistics. And to me, I think Jacare has him covered. To be honest, the only reason I think the line is the way it is, to be honest, is the quote unquote Kevin Holland fight. He's 41 years old. I'm not saying he isn't. Maybe he is done. Maybe this is the quote unquote downfall of Jacare. But what I will say, even to your point against Jan, I mean, he went there and took 2 rounds off of Jan, who's now the champion. It was a 48-47 split decision. Took 2 rounds off of Jack Hermanson. 1-1 with Weidman going into the third. Knocks Weidman out. Super competitive fight with Gastelum. Starches Brunson. So, I mean, the guys, once again, 41, maybe he is done. But historically, he's been fighting nothing but the elites, and he ain't getting blown out of the water by anybody. Like I said, outside of, the hammer fist by Holland, but he actually didn't look bad, in my opinion, at the start.
That was a freak knockout, man. That's not a normal type of loss either. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just, so it's one of those spots when I'm looking at lines and assigning my number and assigning, how I'm going to quote unquote bet it, when I'm looking through it, man, I think Jacare's output, he's not a crazy high output guy historically, but conversely, when he's struggled in the past recently, it's because he's getting outpaced, but Muniz isn't exactly a guy who's going out there putting a pace on anyone. Like really the most recent fight we've seen from him, or really any, that we have stats available for that was at distance for any moderate period of time was against Antonio Arroyo. And I think the strikes were like 21-20. So there's really no evidence out there to suggest that he's going to go out there and put a pace on a guy like Jacare. And that's also been a big problem with Jacare is the cardio, because guys are putting on that pace. But if there's a guy who's not going to put that pace on him, I largely think his cardio will be fine. He's reliable to go forward. I wouldn't say he's the most overtly technical striker in the world, a little rock'em sock'em, largely pretty hook reliant, but he is accurate, lands over 50% of his shots that he connects with. And so I think he actually can win minutes on the feet here. I don't think he's necessarily reliant on a finish. And then you brought up the ground too here, where Muniz, obviously high level black belt, a guy who is willing to accept bottom though. And Jacare hasn't been submitted in like 37 pro fights. Obviously, we know that he's also a world-class jiu-jitsu guy. So, we can talk about, chin, durability, all that stuff going out the window. But one of the things that does not go out the window at 41 is your grappling. Your grappling is fine at 41. So I think he can land takedowns. I think he can get ride time here. Could he submit Muniz? Potentially, but honestly, I don't see it because I actually really do value the jiu-jitsu game of Muniz. I think he's relatively underrated in certain capacities, but I think it's another classic case of potential recency bias. Is the guy done or not? Because at the end of the day, if we find out that he's not done, he's going to come out here and look 70% in this spot, and a pick'em line is going to be absolutely laughable. Conversely, maybe he is done and I eat my bet or whatever. But like I said, all I can focus on stylistics, how it plays out, historics. What has this guy done in the past to prove credence to the fight? Stats, are there numbers that support it? All those three boxes are checked for Jacare for me. I just think it's a difficult proposition for Mr. Muniz to, one, win minutes, or two, finish Jacare. Because I don't think like a Muniz finishes any higher than 20%, personally. So that's just my take.
Shit. You're gonna get me to bet Jacare, man. This is another spot where I lean to the old man and just talking it through with you. It sounds so much better than it does in the echo chamber I've got going on up here. Let's talk numbers, right? Like Jacare averages 2.55 takedowns per 15 minutes with a 39% accuracy. Andre Muniz in his couple of UFC fights averages 2.61 takedowns per 15 with a 35% accuracy. So just almost the exact same takedown rate with just a slight lower accuracy. Jacare's got a 60% takedown defense. Andre has a 37% takedown defense. And the level of competition is severe. Like that's over 5-round main events against the best fighters in the world. Jacare is posting those numbers, and Andre Muniz is doing it against the bottom of the barrel, first step in the UFC type of fighters. And man, I cannot get the image out of my head. He went full Damian Maia in his last fight, where he was laying on his back, gassed out in the third round, refusing to engage his opponent on the feet, and doing the, come play the ground with me
for like that, 3 minutes too.
I'm not sure how he got that decision, man. After rewatching that fight, I was like, this was much more competitive than my brain remembers it being. So yeah, man, I'm going to have to think on that one. I'm right there with you because I think you're right. I think maybe the narrative of saying that his chin is shot is a little bit premature because he took a freak knockout loss to Holland, and then before that he took everything Jan had to offer for 25 minutes. If he goes out there and wrestles the way we've seen him wrestle before, I expect Andre Muniz to end up on his back. And do we think he arm bars Jacare? I mean, the type of level black belt he is, do we think he gets arm barred or triangled from guard?
I doubt it, man. Guys been around forever. Abu Dhabi, all that stuff. Like right? I said, I value the jiu-jitsu of Muniz. He's a very, very good jiu-jitsu player, but it's Jacare, bro. Jacare ain't Bartosz Fabinski, guys. Jacare ain't Bartosz Fabinski. So
damn it, man.
To me at Pick'em, once again, throw the shot or not narrative out the side for 2 seconds. Stylistics favor Jacare, historics favor Jacare, statistics favor Jacare. I'm not saying you got to have 4 or 5 units on him, but I think at the price point, a unit, 1.5, 2 units, I feel like you have to be playing him here. If you eat the bet, you eat the bet. But like I said, hindsight, if we're right, he's not done. He has 70 to 80% upside in this fight.
I feel you. All right, man. So 261 live viewers right now listening to this. The money right now is coming in on Andre Muniz. Sit tight, y'all. Diamond hands. Let's not pull the trigger all at the same time on Jacare. What was that?
I said I pulled it way too early.
Well, I mean, he opened up a minus 140, and that seems right. You know, it seems like he should be the favorite here. But money coming in on the dog, pushing that line down to a pick'em. Maybe we can get it to flip. If we just sit tight and everybody believes that knockout narrative, maybe this line flips and we can get plus 100 or plus 110 on Thursday or Friday, something like that. So everybody just chill. But I'm thinking we may have found another bet. We're probably going to rock with the old man Jacare to ride one more time here. I like it. I like it, man. All right, everybody in the chat going to be giving me shit. I can hear the comments on YouTube already about me starting to add on extra bets with my guest here, but I can't help it. It makes too much sense. That brings us to the main card, folks. We have got a 4-fight main card. Actually, according to Twitter, we have a 5-fight main card. They are moving Schnell and Bontorin to kick off the pay-per-view portion of the evening. So that one will be your first fight on the pay-per-view card on Saturday. I'm going to take a quick break. We're going to hear from one of our sponsors right before we break down this main card for you. So everybody just sit back, relax, and enjoy. Oh, yeah. Making me hungry yet again. We're having just a little bit of a technical issue. Luke let me know that maybe he's got some technical difficulties. There he is. All right, he's back. We got him. All right. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us again. We are talking Shane Burgos versus Edson Barboza. I made a joke earlier about the People's Main Event. This is the People's Main Event, folks. I know a lot of people are excited about the main event and the title being on the line, the return of Tony Ferguson, but damn, this is my pick. This is fight of the night. This is the one that I expect to be just an absolute banger, fireworks, ready for this one to go. And Peter, we can all see the message, buddy. Everybody press 1. Everybody in the chat press 1 for Peter, because he wants us all to press 1 to let us know we can see his message. So tap a 1 there for our boy Peter. Shane Burgos, man, at featherweight 13-2. We've got Edson Barboza 21-9. Shane Burgos is a high, extremely high volume striker. I can't emphasize that enough. Mostly boxing, likes to close the distance, stay in his opponent's face, and he's an absolute zombie, man. This is a guy that when he gets hurt, when he gets hit, he just keeps on powering forward, and he likes to beat up his opponent's calves. We just saw his teammate Trezano pull off the upset as a massive underdog last week and looked incredible doing it. Really reminded me of the way Shane Burgos fights in that fight, actually. So I'm expecting good things from Shane, coming off of a fight of the year candidate against Josh Emmett. One that, man, if there was a title on the line for that fight and it had 2 more rounds, it probably would have been fight of the year last year. It was incredible. And he's taken on Barboza, who is 2-5 in his last 7. Absolutely powerful kicks. If you've been around the UFC for a while, I probably don't need to break down Edson Barboza for you. This guy spins, he attacks the legs, he attacks the body, explosive power shots, everything that he throws. He's always working the body with punches and kicks. But you know what? He seems to struggle with people that stay in his face. You look at the loss to Dan Ige. He struggled with the boxing of Dan Ige, staying in close, staying in tight. You know, his big win over Dan Hooker was a guy he was able to keep at the very end of his kicking game and had a ton of success there. You got to feel like Shane Burgos is going to walk him down the same way that Ige did and just get right in his face. Edson Barboza is another one of these guys, man, that I have tried to fade. He's getting older. I think his best years are behind him. And I think, especially cutting down to 145 the way he is, he's got this incredible ability to suck down to 145 and then blow the hell back up as soon as it's fight time. He is massive in the octagon come fight night. But that's got to take a toll on him like that. I know you said you try not to time the fall of these fighters, but it's got to be around the corner for someone like Barboza, who's just got so many miles on his body and now is cutting down to a horrific weight at this stage of his career. I kind of have a lean here to Shane Burgos. I'm tempted to take him, and I'm famous for my round 3 sprinkles, man. I am tempted to have Burgos breaking Edson Barboza late in this fight with pure volume, constant pressure, and then getting it done late. He's a minus 125 favorite. You can get Edson Barboza at plus 105 or even money on the flip side. Talk to me, Luke. How do you see this fight playing out?
Yeah, dude, I'm kind of surprised this week. I thought we were going to be butting heads on a few more things, but no, I think our opinions have kind of lined up.
I got that all out of the week last week with Locke, man. If you watched that show, we disagreed on every single damn fight. So it's a little nice for me to get some reinforcement this week. It feels good.
Yeah. So I'm kind of with you. I think you really hit the nail on the head with that one major point that I think we have a decent sample size now of, is that Barboza is a guy that struggles with pressure. And so really kind of where the rubber meets the road, though, is Burgos obviously is going to bring it, over 7 strikes landed, per 15 minutes, or I'm sorry, strikes landed per minute, but stays in your face, walks guys down, but he's very, very liable defensively. He eats a ton of significant strikes too. I'm a little nervous of like a head kick, Terry Edom spinning type thing to catch him. I'm not going to lie, because he is there to be hit. But even in the aggregate, I mean, he's proven to be durable historically. Like his fight with Cater, he took a ton of shots. It was the attritional damage of Cater that got to him that ultimately led to the knockout. Emmett, he looked fine largely early. Obviously got dropped twice in the 3rd round, lost that fight. Attritional damage. Emmett landed the bigger shots. But that's the thing with Barboza, he's your range kicker. He likes to kick, flurry, circle. But in a guy who's going to push that type of pace and stay in his face, in a guy in Burgos, I think Burgos is honestly a decent archetype to beat a guy in Edson Barboza a decent amount of the time, just simply because he's not going to give him that space. Now, I think early on, it's definitely going to be a little bit hairier for Burgos, but the longer this fight goes, which is why I really don't hate your attritional, round 3 sprinkle on Burgos, because I do think he has potentially the style to break a guy in Barboza late. But so I'm on Burgos here. I think once again, archetype stylistics definitely favor Burgos here, but he could definitely get sparked in this fight, which is why I'm not going heavier on the fight. I know we can talk about, Edson potentially, not necessarily being what he was, but the guy's still explosive. He still hits and kicks very, very, very hard. Burgos does not seem to be the guy that's cognizant to improve his defense. He's going to just fight that way for better or for worse. Who knows? Maybe the Emmett performance might have changed something, and we come out and we see a bit more defensive responsibility from Burgos once again after taking his second L due to taking a ton of shots. Maybe he switches something up, but something tells me that Shane Burgos is going to be Shane Burgos.
Burgos going to Burgos.
Burgos is going to Burgos, which is fine. Which is why I think there's like a quote unquote cap in terms of his trajectory in the division, but that he's still perennial fringe top 10, top 15 guy, even in the game he brings. So I like that attritional boxing based damage. If he can stay conscious, I think he's going to be the better minute winner. And I definitely think, to your point, I think he's live for an attritional KO late. I know Burgos did say in the week too that he wouldn't be shocked if actually Barboza came out here and started shooting takedowns on him. And I wouldn't be surprised either. And that's what could be actually a sneaky angle for Barboza. I mean, we did see Americani take the first round from Shane via wrestling. Both guys have actually struggled in the grinding. I think actually Burgos, if he wanted to, he could wrestle, but I tend to think that he's probably not going to do that.
That knee up the middle is way too dangerous to to risk it.
Yeah, and I think he's largely just probably going to oblige, in that stand-up affair. But once again, if he can be defensively responsible, avoid that early surge, because that's tends when Barboza tends to be, the most dangerous. That pressure is also going to break down the cardio of Barboza over 3. So I think in that, mid-second round, we're going to see that Barboza footwork slow a little bit. He's going to start to become a little bit more hittable. I think Shane's going to be able to cut the cage off a little bit better, and we see Shane take this one on the cards, but I wouldn't be surprised with the late finish. I think Burgos is a solid play at Pick'em.
Awesome, man. I'm glad to hear we're on the same page on that one again. A couple more things I just want to throw out here. Looking at we mentioned the output of Shane Burgos, man. He's thrown over 100 significant strikes 4 times already in his UFC career. Barboza's only done it once, and that was against Hooker, when Hooker was a literal walking punching bag, just stalking him down, taking all the damage. That's the only time Barboza has hit 100 significant strikes in a single UFC fight. So I think that volume edge is just going to be massive. And the other thing we need to consider is the reach of Shane Burgos, because I talked about how these pressure fighters cause Barboza problems. A guy like Ige, he had to blitz inside. He had to close that distance, stay in his face, stay in tight, because he's got those little T-Rex arms. That's the only way he could hit Barboza. Otherwise, you're at kicking range and you're a dead man walking. Burgos is going to be able to punch Barboza when he throws a kick. He's got that lanky, long, tall build. He's big for the division. I don't think he's going to have any problem trading with Barboza in that middle range. He's still going to be able to keep the pressure on Barboza, and I think that's going to cause a problem for Barboza's gas tank, because he'll never get that breather. There's that middle range where people are scared to engage Barboza. They got to be all in or all out. Shane's not going to have that problem. I think he just stays on him, and that's another thing that kind of lends itself to him getting the W here.
Yep. Right there with you, bro.
All right. Love hearing that. And Gabriel being a dick in the chat here. I know I bet Mach 1 against Barboza. Okay, I know. I'm sorry. I'm human. In my defense, I thought Mach 1 was going to wrestle a bit more. And I'm just kidding calling you a dick, Gabriel. I know you're just having some fun. So I'm just having fun back. Don't get upset at me. Don't hurt me. Next up, we've got women's flyweight, man. What do I call her? She's not my rival, but one of my greatest enemies, Katlyn Chookagian, one of the women who has robbed me of the most money since I started this damn betting thing from day one. Another one of these fighters that I have marked is just not as good as the results have shown, and she keeps beating me every time I bet against her. 15-4, Katlyn Chookagian taking on Viviane Araujo, who is 10-2. Katlyn, unfortunately, knows how to use her length. She knows how to stay long. She's got a nice, very intelligent jab. That is something I've come to understand that I'm not allowed to take away from her. But she does have pillow fists. She can't really hurt anybody. She's got to be high volume, and she kios, and those get counted as strikes sometimes, and she's robbed a couple of women of decisions because she makes more noise than her opponent in there. She does have a good front kick. She's got underrated grappling. Her wrestling is not so hot. She struggles in the wrestling department, but her jiu-jitsu is actually pretty sharp. Not as bad as a lot of us felt like it was. She always tries to stay outside. Very solid range control. And this is a relative step down in competition for her. She's been cracking at that top 5 in the division for a very, very long time. And now she's become a bit of a stepping stone here for Vivi, who a lot of people are high on, making her first move up into the contender ranks here after a good showing her last time out. Now, Vivi is very light on her feet. She cuts good angles. She's explosive, good side-to-side movement. She also has a nice jab, good head movement, and she put a clinic on Roxy, man. When she finds those spots where she can sit down on a punch mid-combo, she had Roxy hurt and rocked several times. She's got a big overhand right, and she averages just ever so slightly more output than Katlyn Chookagian does. Katlyn averages 4.22 significant strikes per minute while absorbing 4.23. So even though we feel like she's impressive, she's actually getting hit just as much as she is hitting. Vivi on the other side averages 4.97 significant strikes per minute, absorbing 4.84. So she's got a slightly better ratio, lower level of competition. That makes sense, but she does have that higher output, and she's got a 94% takedown defense rating. She averages 2.33 takedowns per 15 minutes with a 64% accuracy. Man, am I just going to kiss money away again? Because Katlyn Chookagian, her 51% takedown defense is a giant glaring hole. I think we finally found someone who can stand with her on the feet, who can match her output, and then can also mix in the grappling and the takedowns, being the bigger, more physical opponent, and get a win over Katlyn. I've said it before, and I've paid for it. I'm tempted to bet on Viviane Araújo here against Katlyn Chookagian. Tell me how you're feeling about this fight, Luke.
Do it, Clint. No, it's definitely an interesting fight. I am actually on Araújo, and that's ironic because I am a Chookagian truther, but for a lot of the points you made too, is that she is the quintessential excellent weasel. I think a really interesting thing to lay out here is I was just running back through a ton of her fights, and I'm like, okay, her record in the UFC is awesome. Like she's beaten a lot of good girls. I believe she's 8-4. But fun fact, she has only won 30-27 or better twice. She's actually been outlanded by Barella, Davis, Calderwood, Shevchenko, and Andrade statistically.
That Calderwood one pisses me off.
Yeah. So I guess my angle on the thing is, like, I was always actually very critical on Araújo early because of the potential gas tank considerations, dropped the fight to Jessica Eye. That didn't look particularly encouraging. She takes down Alexis Davis, gets reversed, gets stuck on her back for 3 minutes, doesn't get back up. Red flag. But what I will say, in her last two fights against DLR, she just went a hard 15 minutes, 30-27, got hit a lot. That's fair. But was the girl going forward? Was the girl winning the optics? Was the girl landing the bigger shots? Montana was busted up bad at the end of that fight, and then went out there and just put a clinic on Roxy. So what makes this fight interesting is I think both girls play the range game well. They're high output, but they both get hit. They both have defensive inefficiencies. So really what the fight to me comes down to is actually the optics. I think Vivi will be the girl going forward here. I think the output's going to be roughly the same as per the stats, not just because of the stats, but just based on how both girls fight. I think we're going to see a high volume striking affair where I think Vivi can win the optics. I think she can land the bigger shots. But once again, Chook's a weasel. Got to throw that in there. She does a great job doing it. She does a great job making noises. She's going to land her own shots 100% for sure. But then to your point too, Clint, I do think Araújo has a really solid wrestling path on the ground here. Her takedown metrics are solid. I know Chook is a brown belt. Danaher, I get that. But from what we have seen from Araújo on top, she's been fine. She's a jiu-jitsu black belt. Her submissions have came more historically on the regional scene. Hasn't been much of a threat in the UFC. But I do think it's a clear path for her in the fight, not necessarily to just, run Chookagian on the ground, but I think it's a great way to aid in her winning rounds of the fight. And then conversely, people talk, well, maybe if Araújo gets stuck on her back, once again, still a concern because it hasn't looked good when she's been there, but her takedown defense is elite. I think it's 92% right now. Chookagian, the first takedowns she's ever landed were her fight against Shevchenko, where that was, I think, a pretty much shocking performance, at least regardless of which side you were on, just in terms of how it played out. I don't think anybody said that Chookagian was going to go out there ragdoll Shevchenko and just beat her up, on the ground for the better part of 15 minutes. But so that's really the only thing out there to suggest that, she can land takedowns. But once again, that's against Antonina, a girl we've talked about before, who has struggled with her takedown defense and her bottom game. Araújo, black belt, 92% takedown defense. Once again, if it gets there, do have some concerns, but I do think Vivi could work back to the feet as well. So not a super bullish, confident take, but at a plus number, I do think Araújo is the side here. Chookagian has talked about starting a family just from a side narrative perspective. It sounds like she's about at the end of her rope. I think she's probably going to go until she loses and then hang it up. And unfortunately, thank you, Chook, for all the tennis noises over the years. You've been fun to watch. I appreciate you. I sincerely mean that, though. She has been a fun girl to watch in a lot of ways. But I do think she takes an L here, and I think she hangs up the gloves. I think we see Araújo challenge for a title in relatively short order.
And that's kind of my thing, man, is I like to fade fighters when they take that step up in competition. but I think she's ready. I think she's put the whole thing together. I think she's got the physicality. She's in incredible shape. She's strong. I think she does all the right things on the feet. And I think she's going to hit harder than Katlyn does. So if they're matching 1-for-1, you mentioned the optics. I think that Katlyn's going to be the one getting rocked, the one stumbling back. I think Araujo is going to be the one pinning her up against the fence, taking her down. Damn it. All right. I'm probably going to have to end up, man, I'm going to have like 7 bets on this card now. I'm going to have so much ridiculous action on this stupid card because I feel like you and I are agreeing way too much because all of my leans are just getting like reinforced with every conversation we have. So
that's what I was hoping we're going to butt heads a little bit more, dude. And it might be a little bit more back and forth, but yeah, we're kind of on the same page for a lot of these.
Wow. All right. So everybody that likes the arguing, you go back and watch last week's episode with Locke because it's not happening tonight. We got a couple more opportunities here. We'll give it a shot. Next fight up, middleweight Jacare Manson taking on Edmund Shevchenko. I swear if Chookagian robs me again, dude, I've got PTSD. I'm already feeling it. Jacare Manson taking on Edmund Shevchenko is off the card. Unfortunately, somebody in Hermansson's corner apparently has popped for COVID. It's only getting pushed back for 1 week. So, yes, Nigel, yes, I am going to learn the hard way yet again. So, we should be getting Edmund Shevchenko and Jacare Manson on next week's card rather than this one, unfortunately. So, we'll save that one. Next up, we've got the co-main event, lightweight fight, Tony Ferguson taking on Beneil Dariush. This is such a good fight, man, because Tony is an absolute legend. He's the guy that was almost there. We had the Tony and Khabib thing going on. He's kind of fallen from grace. It's his opportunity to really bounce back and show us that he's still who he is. And Beneil Dariush, a guy that's just been grinding. Like we knew he was elite. We knew he had the goods. And he just has never gotten his chance. He finally gets to crack. You know what I mean? He finally gets that shot against a guy that could catapult him into true contendership. This is such a fun fight, in my opinion. You know, Tony, absolutely unorthodox on the feet, a wild man striking, throws spinning stuff, elbows from crazy angles. He's got those razor-sharp blades. He cuts people up and leaves them a bloody mess. He's a grappling wizard. Even though he's got a wrestling base, he's another one of these guys that does accept bottom position and tends to play off of his back more often than not. But he can catch people in these crazy chokes from pretty much anywhere because of his lanky build. And now he's moved over to box with Freddie Roach. So we should expect to see a bit more of a concerted effort with his boxing on the feet, which I think is a wise move considering how good of a boxer Beneil Dariush is. Beneil Dariush is just extremely well-rounded, man. Slick BJJ, strong, powerful wrestling, good, sharp boxing, heavy hands when he wants to sit on those punches, and it feels like he's on a mission. I think Beneil Dariush thinks he's been a little disrespected. I think he feels like he should have been a contender far before this point in time, and now he's finally got his opportunity. And I think the market is recognizing that as well. Beneil Dariush is a minus 165 favorite. Tony Ferguson, the plus 145 underdog. And I'm real torn here, man, because this feels like a recency bias, leave him for dead type of situation on Tony Ferguson. But I'm kind of feeling that way myself. I got to shout out my guy, James Lynch. He's going to be on the podcast again soon, one of these days. He compared Tony Ferguson to Tyrone Woodley, man. Remember when he took that first elite loss and then it was just all downhill sledding from there? He lost the drive. He lost the motivation. He lost, whatever it is, he lost it. He just didn't have it anymore. And that kind of feels like what's happening to Tony Ferguson. He feels like he's on that slide. Now, he changed things up. He got a new gym. He's going to Freddie Roach for boxing. He's sharpening the tools. So maybe it's not quite to the same degree. Tony Ferguson is still making the right moves. He didn't drop a rap album this week. So there's still, a little something there. But at the same time, I can kind of feel him just being on the backslide of his career, whereas Beneil Dariush is streaking right now. What do you think?
Yeah, dude, like usually I'm like super, super vocal about these quote unquote recency bias spots. This guy's on this crazy run. This guy perennial, solid, hits a bit of a skid, public gonna overvalue, the strong thing from Dariush, the undervalue, the quote unquote skid from Ferguson. But to your point again, dude, I think it's justified. I really do. And not only because I think he's quote unquote on the downhill necessarily, but when he has just kind of looked different, even against Gaethje and Oliveira. I mean, two world-class guys on paper, not bad losses in any sort of in any stretch of the imagination at all, but he just didn't look to be the same guy in terms from like a stylistic perspective of the fight. We just saw Charles Oliveira go out there and ragdoll him and get almost 12 plus minutes of control time. And I do think Dubronx's wrestling is actually pretty underrated. He's largely known for his submission game, and, we'll talk about that, in the next fight. But the guy can wrestle too. But conversely, Dariush, I think his wrestling has always been pretty underrated too. His metrics are solid. I mean, the guy went out there and has now, grinded out a guy in CDF twice who's, a high-level black belt. He's beaten a couple other solid guys. Actually, the wrestling has been a big component of his game, even more so in recent years than anything. Like, backpacked Jacare close for the entire first round, ran Camacho on the ground, got a ton of time on Dober, subbed him, ran through Thiago Moises on the ground, who's a pretty high-level black belt too. And so that's kind of really where the main path for me in terms of the fight, because I do think the stand-up is competitive. If not, might even potentially favor Tony. I like Dariush's willingness to throw and go forward, but he can get a little too reckless at times. I do think Tony might be a bit crisper, a bit sharper on the feet. But with that, I just think there's actually such a clear wrestling edge for Dariush on the ground, because not only can he wrestle, like you said, he's a high-level black belt too. He's very positionally responsible. And even in the scenario that he's not able to quote-unquote flatten Tony like Charles did for 12 minutes, he does a really good job from the body lock and just riding guys against the fence. And that also is a large reason of what sets up his back takes and rear naked chokes. I'm not saying he's going to go out there and submit a guy in Tony Ferguson. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked, surprised, yes, but I think the wrestling path is there, and that's largely why the price is justified. Not as much as, quote unquote, Tony has done. It's that Benny's good, man. Benny's good.
Really
He's another one of these guys who's just been very, very undervalued. But if you just look at his overall skill set, the guy's good. The guy's good, and I do think he has a decent style and a decent archetype to beat a guy in Ferguson. But if he decides to, get into the quote unquote 15-minute slugfest pressure type game, I still kind of think that favors Ferguson. Ferguson's metrics are still unreal. He still walks guys down. Even in his fight with Gaethje, you can say what you want, about him taking the amount of damage he did. He took a lot of clean shots. It took him damn near 25 minutes for the ref to even come in and stop it. It's not like Gaethje put him out cold. Like, he took a lot of attritional damage before that fight was even stopped. So does Benny come out there and blow the doors off of Tony Ferguson? I don't think so, to be completely honest. So I'm not counting out Tony in the spot at all. But I do think there's a very clear path for Benny on the ground, and I agree with him being favored. Would I lay minus 160 on it? I don't know. Probably not. I think the line's probably roughly correct. I think you can go all the way up to like maybe minus 200 if he does take that path, because I think that path is so clear for Benny to win minutes. And I think one of your boys in the chat just said Benny by decision. If you want to buy down, that's probably going to be a plus number. I would assume plus 130, plus 140. I think that could be a decent look for the fight too.
Yeah, man, I think that's plus 130, Beneil Dariush by decision. I think that's kind of the move to make. I think you're absolutely spot on. Dariush is one of those guys that, shout out to Rockstar Z, he calls them good soldiers. You know what I mean? He goes out there and you're not going to get a bunch of questions. The only times that we really see Beneil Dariush go off script is when plan A isn't working. You know what I mean? When he got the big knockout over Jacare close via spinning elbow, it was because he had lost his legs and he had to do something to change it up. You know what I mean? Besides that, he's going to go out there and take him down. He's going to look for the wrestling. He's going to look to slow it down. And I know Tony's working with Freddie Roach, but I think that Beneil Dariush is still going to be the better boxer. There's only so much you can do in one fight camp. I don't really expect Tony to improve to the point that he's suddenly a better boxer than a guy like Beneil Dariush. And if this thing gets hairy on the feet, Dariush should just be changing levels, And I know Tony used to be a wrestler, but we haven't really seen it from him in a long time. I don't know if he's gonna bother to, push the head down, use his hips, defend that takedown with everything that he's got. He probably just rolls on his back and looks for an omoplata or something. Like, that's what he does. That's Tony Ferguson. I don't necessarily think we're going to see a reined-in, turned corner Tony Ferguson at this stage of his career. Now, he absolutely could put something on Beneil Dariush and break him over the course of the fight. He could clip him with a spinning elbow in close or something. Tony Ferguson adds a randomness to the fight that you just really can't predict. And that's probably why I'm going to pass on this one. I'm going to say Beneil Dariush wins this thing by decision. I like that spot. I think he gets it done. But I'm also a fan of Tony Ferguson. Like a lot of people in the chat, I don't really want to see him lose. And this one could be a really fun fight. Both these guys have had durability concerns. Both these guys can land finishes, knockouts, submissions. There's a lot of ways this fight could both go the distance and not go the distance. I would be tempted on a violence bet at the plus 150, under 2.5. But I've seen Tony Ferguson, like you mentioned, he walked through Justin Gaethje. I think Dariush probably hits about as hard as Gaethje does, but he doesn't have that level of output. He's not going to go in there and put a 15-minute beating on Tony Ferguson to try to get that TKO victory. He's a bit more slower. He's a bit more selective with his shots. So because of that, I don't really see him dropping and knocking Tony Ferguson out with a walk-off KO or anything like that. And as much as one of these guys could win and get a submission and a scramble, they're both defensively sound enough that I don't really see anybody tapping either. So, yeah, man, I'm probably thinking over, and I don't want to lay minus 200 on the over 2.5. I don't really want to pick a side. Like you said, the line is about accurate. This is a good spot to say I think this guy wins and sit back and just watch. At least in my opinion.
Yeah.
So you're with me? We both think Beneil Dariush takes this one?
Yeah, Dariush decision for me. I still honestly, if I'm thinking a massive surge of Ferguson money comes in at some point, though. I really, really do. I think midweek, I'm going to say around Wednesday, I think we're going to see a big Ferguson push at some point.
Looking over here at
If it gets down more, honestly, I might just do the money line, to be honest.
I'm kind of there with you, man. If you can get an even money, if you can get a minus 120 or something like that on Dariush, that'd be a spot. That absolutely would be a spot that I would be interested in. But like I mentioned, the randomness of Tony Ferguson, I don't really want to lay big chalk against a guy that can pull a rabbit out of his hat mid-fight.
Yeah, and it could be one of those spots where hindsight 2020 Ferguson just shows up, old school Tony Ferguson. He doesn't get pushed around, and we're like, Tony Ferguson was plus 120 here. I just have this weird feeling that, just weird old school Tony comes out.
Me too. That's what, man, I'm right there with you on the line. If we get even money on Beneil Dariush, I'll take the shot. But we've talked about lines being wrong a couple times on this show already. Looking at the back class of Tony Ferguson, isn't it a little weird? Like, he should maybe still be favored here, right? Like, just based on his pedigree, the people that he's fought, the career that he's had, I don't know that he should be this big of an underdog.
To me, it's just the wrestling as to why I think the line is justified and is the way it is personally. But
I completely agree.
Tony Ferguson, man.
I completely agree that it's the wrestling that's really the key, but is that enough to make him a minus 165? Like, just because this guy can wrestle? He's fought guys that could wrestle before. I don't know, man. I'm kind of there with you. I got those hairs on the back of my neck standing up. I'm a little spooked here. I don't want to be laying chalk against a guy like Tony Ferguson. All right, folks, that'll do it. That'll bring us to the main event of the evening. And, of course, we got to hear from our sponsors right here, Pub Sports Radio. So grateful to them picking up the Die Hard MMA podcast. Sit tight. Check it out. Maybe the best commercial of all time.
Where's the bang bang, Preston? Come on.
I can't breathe. I can't breathe.
Pub Sports Radio. Come find us in Southtown 101. Subscribe on YouTube and all platforms where podcasts are found.
That's where it's at, everybody. You just saw the action of a live fight stream. That's what we do. Check out my boy Boston Nick. He hosts those bad boys every single live MMA event. PFL on Thursdays. You got Bellator on Fridays, UFC on Saturdays. We're always hanging out live, drinking, having a good time. And yes, we freak out just like that when we win big tickets. So it's a good time. Make sure you subscribe here to Pub Sports Radio and don't miss one of the good, fun hangouts. I might be able to make it this weekend. I've been missing for a couple of weeks, so I might be able to get on there for a stream this weekend for this big, amazing pay-per-view card headlined by Charles Oliveira taking on Michael Chandler. I am joined by Luke from Sparring with Reality and the Club and Sub podcast to talk about UFC 262. Man, what a fight. Charles Oliveira we've talked about it a couple times already this week, man. There are certain fighters that I have looked to fade because I don't like things about them, and that son of a bitch is on an 8-fight win streak. I have not been able to fade him at all recently. Now, in my defense, there were a couple times in there that I did bet on him because he had such gift layups of opponents, like when he fought Gordon. So I've gotten a little bit back a couple times, but I've attempted to fade him because I still think he's got that quit in him. He's shown it before in fights where if you stay in his face, if you don't go away, if you punch him as hard as he punches you, he breaks, he quits. And that's something I've just never quite been able to let go. Now, maybe that was a young man and he's turned that corner and he's a real fighter now and he's a championship caliber guy, but that's always floating around in the back of my head. Offensively, Oliveira is a monster. Striking, BJJ, everything. Wrestling, we see now that final puzzle piece has fallen in place when he fought Tony Ferguson. He's a beast, man. He's an absolute beast at 155, and he deserves to be here. He's been knocking on the door of a title shot for some time now, and I got to sneeze, so I almost lost it in the middle of the breakdown. I had to mute because I thought I was going to blow the microphone away. So he's rightfully deserving of this title shot, man. But it's kind of weird being at 155 and having a vacant title to battle over with Khabib stepping away the way he did. No Gaethje, no Dustin, no Conor. Like, this is the weirdest fight for the UFC to put together. But I also understand they're trying to cash in on Michael Chandler coming over from Bellator. And he's just an absolute monster, man. He's one of these little powerhouse, short, stocky build, explosive power puncher, strong wrestler. And he's working with guys like Kamaru Usman. You got to expect that he's putting all the pieces of the puzzle together at the right time. We've got a near pick'em here, minus 130 on Charles Oliveira, plus 110 on Michael Chandler, and maybe it's a little bit of hype. Maybe it's a little bit of my own personal biases against Charles Oliveira, but I think Michael Chandler is the side that I like here in this fight. I mean, the UFC bought into this guy first and foremost. They believe in what he's doing. He's training with guys like Kamaru Usman. We know what that can do for you, and then he's a better wrestler than Charles Oliveira is. That short, stocky build is going to help him when it comes to the takedowns, the grappling, those exchanges. You always want to be the guy that's lower to the hips when it comes to the wrestling. So maybe we take the wrestling of Oliveira a little bit off the table. And if that's the case, he's got to play off his back. He's going to be taller, longer. Maybe he can outstrike this guy. But I also feel like Chandler's the exact kind of guy that can close that distance and punch Oliveira in the mouth and cause him to question himself in the cage again and break. I feel like I'm leaning to Michael Chandler here at the short dog price, man. How do you feel like this one plays out?
Well, I guess let's complete like the trifecta. How we agree again too.
I was hoping we were going to be on opposites for this one. Damn.
But I guess one thing that I will slightly disagree with you about in terms of Oliveira, the Oliveira like quitter thing. He has quit in the past, but he has not quit in a long time, is what I will say. I'm not saying that couldn't rear its head again, but it has not been shown, in the last, three or so years. So that is honestly kind of completely to the side for me in terms of my handicapping of this fight. But I guess from a high level, I just feel like a guy like Michael Chandler is a decent archetype to beat a guy in Charles Oliveira, which terrifies me to say at the same time because I value the game of Oliveira. The guy's dangerous. I think he has the ability to finish anybody at 155 pounds. I think his boxing has come a long way over the last 4 or 5 years. We've seen his wrestling, like I said, even come along. I think that's always been a little underrated. Not a guy you can get sloppy against, not a guy you can make small mistakes against. And, that's credence to why, he's quote unquote climbed the division now. But there are a couple fights that are concerning for him in regards to this matchup with Chandler. First and foremost, his fight with David Tamer, he did get clipped a little bit. And then even going back to the Felder fight, Lamas fight, he faced a little bit more resistance there. Even Kevin Lee wrestled him and looked largely pretty good, in the early parts of that fight before ultimately getting guillotined on entry in the third.
I was going to say, I blame Kevin Lee more for that loss than I do Oliveira. That's one of the ones, man. I was backing Kevin Lee in that fight, and he was doing everything right up until the moment that he stuck his neck out on that takedown.
Yeah, I actually bet Oliveira in that fight, and not to be like Johnny come lately, that's honestly kind of how I saw it playing. I figured that Kevin Lee was going to have early success. It was a 5-round fight. I figured he was going to get tired wrestling him, and he was going to make small mistakes. And so I bet
nailed it. And that's what Kevin Lee has always done. I thought he was dialed in and he was gonna lock it up for the first time, but he absolutely just made one slight little error, and that's where Oliveira took advantage of it. I think if Kevin Lee could have kept it on the path, he probably cruises his way to a win there. But that's he's a little inconsistent. We know that. I don't think Michael Chandler is going to make that mistake going in on a takedown.
Yeah, so I guess that's kind of where the rubber meets the road in terms of why I still do have, some questions. I did bet Chandler here at plus 115, but I do have some questions on his approach. Is he going to just completely say, I'm positionally responsible on top, I'm the better wrestler, he's not going to create space on me, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to go right into the guard of Charles Oliveira, and I'm going to wrestle him, I'm going to mix that in, and that's how I'm going to help win this fight? Or does he say, maybe I don't want to mess with that, I'm going to play that mid-range game, I'm potentially the faster, more explosive guy, I have finishing upside on the feet, still some defensive irresponsibilities from Oliveira, am I going to go out there and try to outstrike this guy? So that's where I still do have some questions on approach. But honestly, I think Chandler can check both of those boxes too. I think he is probably more live for a knockout of the two. Like you said, fast, explosive. Oliveira's been dinged before. His defense has improved a bit, but there still are some issues where he will kind of just throw caution to the wind at times and really just let it fly. And I don't think that's something he's really going to be able to do against Chandler. And then in terms of Chandler wrestles, obviously Oliveira, very, very dangerous. I said it right off the top. He can submit anybody, but I do think Chandler has the caliber of wrestling to essentially not let Oliveira create that space. I think he can largely be a blanket on top, or even maybe if he wants to take, the quote unquote more mat return, cage, grinded on the back type of scenario where maybe he doesn't want to mess with the guard. Maybe he's just shooting, pushes him to the cage, swings around, takes his back, knees on the quad, that type of thing just makes it greasy, grindy early. And then, in the second or third or something like that, we see him go into the guard when we see a more tired Charles Oliveira. So we'll see. But I guess from an official prediction standpoint, I'm more on the side. I think Chandler comes out and smokes him. I'm not saying that because he knocked out Dan Hooker. I'm not saying no. It's more so just a stylistic thing that I think that explosive nature is going to give Charles Oliveira problems, and it's just going to be something that I don't think he's ready for when that shot comes. And I think Chandler's going to be able to put him down. But I completely acknowledge the fact that when you're betting against a guy like Charles Oliveira, that your blood pressure is going to be high. Might want to have a few cocktails for that bet and be willing to lose it. And I'm 100% willing to lose it. It's just a play on the numbers at a plus number. I think Chandler has the game to hand Mr. Dubronx an L.
All right, man. Well, like everybody in the chat knows, we have agreed on damn near every single fight this evening. So sorry for not getting into it and arguing back and forth on a couple of these, but I like that we're on the same page. And honestly, man, I have been... I was more of a volume better back in the day, and I've been a little bit more selective recently. I may just go nuts on UFC 262 because it's such a good card, and we're playing a lot of spots that I feel very strongly about, that we're on the right side of the recency biases that I think are driving a lot of these numbers. So I think there's an opportunity here. I think there's some spots for money to be made. As of right now, just to recap, I am already on Andrea KGB Lee at plus 125. I may be adding Kevin Angel of Death Aguilar at plus 100. That was the first one I touched on. Vannata Grundy, that's going to be a post-weigh-in show review of Vannata's body at 145. I lean to Grundy there. Schnell and Bontorin, I'm looking at the under 2.5 when that thing is available widely. Jacare Souza is probably a spot that I'm going to end up on. I'm tempted on Priscila Cachoeira by knockout. Remember, that's the one, though, that I said that maybe if I don't end up scattershotting the entire card, looks like I might end up passing there. Let's see here. We're looking at... I don't think I'm going to bet Jamie Pickett, but I think Jamie Pickett wins. Shane Burgos is a spot I'm probably going to bet. Viviane Araujo. Got to fade Katlyn Chookagian until the day she retires because it's what I do. And then not going to bet Beneil Dariush, but I do think he wins. And then maybe betting Michael Chandler. Also very interested in the under 2.5 here on the main event. Let's touch on that for a quick second before we bounce out of here. Under 2.5 is minus 140, man. And I feel like this might be a spot that just makes it easy, right? Because if Charles Oliveira does do what he can do, if Michael Chandler comes out the way he did against Dan Hooker, and Oliveira is able to weather that storm, he probably takes over and finishes Chandler when he has that adrenaline dump and gasses out and slows down. If Chandler can't close the range or catches a knee on a blitz attack, he could get put down. We've seen the type of offensive firepower from a guy like Chandler, the kind of ground and pound he has, the one-shot knockout power that he has. And like I mentioned, it hasn't reared its head for a while, but Oliveira can quit. I do want to say that I feel like Oliveira is a perfect good hammer, bad nail type of fighter. The reason he hasn't quit recently, we haven't really seen him be the nail. So if that gets turned on him, it's there. What do you think about the under 2.5 on the main event?
Yep, agreed. Once again, not an official play for me, but I jumped on some early shares. I think at minus 115 at one of the early lines on it. I do think it's kind of one of those quintessential matchups of who's able to get off on their game is going to have success, and in that success, whichever capacity that it comes, I think it's coming early, and someone's probably getting finished. Like I said, I think Chandler's probably pretty live for a knockout early in that blitz striking game. If he shoots any sort of sloppy takedowns, honestly, I think the submission potential from Oliveira is actually more so off of a Chandler takedown attempt and falling into a guillotine than it is from Chandler actually securing a takedown and getting triangled or armbarred. I actually think Chandler can be defensively responsible on top. But either way, I think both guys are pretty live for finishes in their capacity to get off in the game. So, you got 12 and a half minutes to go out there and find something around pick 'em. I doubt it probably sat there. Like you said, now it's like minus 140. It's probably going to get bet up even more, minus 160. I don't know if I'd touch it, but at an early line, minus 150, I was like, or minus 115, I'm sorry. I'm like, yeah, I'm in.
Okay. Well, good on you for beating the line move there, man. Yeah, I think minus 140, minus 150 is kind of getting to the peak of where I would want to lay that kind of juice on it. But I'm kind of feeling like a second or a third round finish for this fight if these guys come out the way we've seen them recently. So, all right, there you have it, everybody. That was UFC 262 here on the Die Hard MMA podcast, broken down by myself and my guy Luke. Luke, man, it was an absolute blast. Such a fun time having you here on the show. Good talking fights with you finally in person. And hey, the floor is yours. Tell the people where they can find you. Let them know what you got going on. And just feel free to shout out whatever you want at this point.
Yep. Thanks for having me on, Clint, dude. This was super fun. Hopefully I'll be able to jump back on at some point down the line. Got to, once again, get you on the club and sub for a breakdown over there. Definitely going to be needing some guests soon. Maybe have you on for that 50th show I think it's either next week or 2 weeks from now. Might have to bring you on for that. But yeah, Cheap Flugs, SWR_betting on Twitter. I am on Instagram as well. I probably need to get a little bit more active back on there again. But primarily I'm mainly active on Twitter. Once again, Club and Sub Podcast, YouTube, Wednesday nights at 10 Eastern. Me and a roundtable of other bettors. My boy John C. Lags breaking down the cards every single week. I am quote unquote semi-tout. I do run a Patreon, offer 3 tiers, $10 a month for just my bets, $15 a month bets and breakdowns, full card breakdowns, usually anywhere between 10 to 15,000 words. Pretty in-depth prop article, parlay article every single week. $20, get everything in the first 2 tiers, but you get like a one-on-one coaching session with me as well. Ultimately, my goal in that is to just help people not make the same mistakes I did when starting. I've done about 7 or 8 of them now. I think a lot of people have really helped and benefited from it so far. So yeah, if you guys are looking to early access for my plays, content, bets, I would appreciate the support over there on the Patreon. Like I said, guys, pretty cheap, 10, 15, $20 a month. Netflix subscription. Essentially, I like to communicate back and forth with everybody. Just started dabbling in some video as well. I do a weekly live stream for all patrons, regardless of which tier you're on as well. Doing a recap, running through my bets for the card and answering all your guys' questions, Q&A, and all that stuff. So yeah, it's been fun. I'm almost at about the 50th patron mark. I think I'm at actually officially 49 right now. And so the growth this year and support has been amazing. Hopefully it keeps coming up 50 units this year. So looking to keep it rolling, dude.
Good deal, man. Good deal. All right. Everybody make sure, if nothing else, give the boy a follow on Twitter. He's awesome over there. And make sure you check out his Patreon page. Just been absolutely killing the game. One of the reasons why I wanted to have him on here on the show. Make sure we get some good actual sports betting information that you can work off of, not just my degenerate ass. So thank you all so much for being here for the Die Hard MMA podcast. Make sure you give us a like if you can. That's the best thing you can do to support the show. Let people know that you enjoyed it. Throw a comment in below. Let me know who you think is going to be, let's see, the biggest upset underdog this week. I know the lines are tight, so I want to know who you think the biggest underdog on this week's card that's going to come through is here in the chat. And as always, I just want to leave you all with a little bit of warm fuzzy. The world is kind of starting to open back up. We're starting to go back to normal. Some of these restrictions are getting lifted off of us. The life of the degenerate does not change. You still have your online family, the people we've been interacting with throughout this COVID thing for all these last, several months, year and a half or so. And make sure you still lean on those people that you need. You're going to have a lot of people begging for your time and for your attention. Family members, friends, people you haven't interacted with in person are going to be knocking on your doors. It will be easy to get overwhelmed. Take some time for yourself. It is okay for you to tell people no, that you need to spend an afternoon or an evening in watching Netflix, turn on Austin Powers and just have a laugh and order a pizza. Take care of yourself. You go have a great week out there. Good luck on all your degenerate action. And as always, let's roll.